As much as I love pen and paper, this thing right here is pretty darn powerful and useful. And I'd like to share with you how I'm using it as a sketchnoting tool. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to Sketchnote School. I am your host, Doug Neill, and I love experimenting with different tools for capturing, processing, and sharing ideas using some combination of words and visuals together. And my goal with most of that experimentation is to find specific tool combinations that meet specific needs, like using index cards to map out a new project, or a legal pad to write first draft video scripts and blog posts, or large poster paper and markers to sketch out ideas with a friend. It's that approach of trying to find the natural overlap between a particular tool and a particular task that has guided my experimentation with tablets, such as the iPad and Apple Pencil. So let's get into how I've been using that tool and how you might be able to use it as well. So here we are within my iPad, and before we jump into Procreate, I also wanted to mention a few other apps that I have experimented with a bit, or at least have heard to be very useful. And those three are Autodesk Sketchbook, Paper by 53, and Work Visual, which was created specifically with graphic facilitators and sketchnoters in mind. So if you haven't already, I encourage you to check those three out. For today, let's jump into Procreate. As you'll see, the samples that come with the app are much more illustration-based, but I thought I'd share with you some examples of my own work, starting with this Sketchnotes folder. Here is a sketchnote I did planning out a road trip that I did last October. I drove from my home in Portland, Oregon, out to Minneapolis, Minnesota to attend a conference called NerdCon Stories, which was all about storytelling. By the way, this t-shirt that I'm wearing is from that event. One of the things that I'm trying to get better at, and the reason that I went to that conference, was to become a better storyteller. Both here at Verbal to Visual, but then also on my personal YouTube channel, which is also tied into this road trip and the new sketches that I'm going to be showing you today. For this sketchnote, as you can see, I only used a single color, but one of the benefits of using an iPad app is the ability to switch between lots of different colors, which is what you can see in this sketchnote here, a more recent one that I shared on Instagram, representing my intent to spend less of my day job hours on YouTube and more of it on working, but then also taking the time throughout my day to do a bit of reflection and sharing, as opposed to getting pulled into the rabbit hole of YouTube. I have also used this app to make sketchnote videos, and I'll show you a few examples here. This might look familiar if you saw the episode on developing your listening skills. As you can see from the layers tool here, I started with a base layer of orange paint marks and then created a little intro for that video, a title sketch for improving your listening skills, and here was the meat of that episode, cropped down to about something like that. And even just today, the video that you're watching right now, you saw this intro slide that I just created. And if you would like to see how I use this tool to create sketchnote videos, I actually did a whole behind the scenes on the recording of this intro sequence so that you can see how you can use a tablet such as an iPad along with an app like Procreate to make cool and engaging sketchnote videos. So if you would like to see that application of using an iPad, then check out our course, How to Make Sketchnote Videos. And before jumping into some new sketchnotes that I'm working on here on the iPad, I want to show you another potential application, which is kind of the merger of photographs and sketchnoted elements on top. This is a quick experiment that I did as a potential thumbnail image for an episode of Visual Conversations. Creations. That's me and Austin there in one of the more recent episodes in which we discuss how to develop your personal style. So the idea of adding some sketched elements on top of photographs is something that I'm intrigued with. I ended up not using this specific example because it looks far too much similar to the one that Chase Jarvis used in his video, which was the inspiration and starting point for our conversation. So I didn't want to straight up copy Chase's style, so I went with a different approach there. But you can imagine different ways you might add a sketchnoted layer on top of a photograph. And another example of that is this image here. So that's a photo from this road trip that I mentioned, and I went on top of that and just sketched out my name and the themes of my personal YouTube channel, a place where I documented a large portion of that road trip in vlog format. That is where I was experimenting with my own storytelling style and am continuing to experiment. And this was kind of just a header image that I wanted to be able to use there on YouTube and potentially other websites where I'm sharing some of my own more personal creative work. Finally, the thing that I want to share with you to show some actual work in progress is a set of visuals that I'm working on to summarize some of the lessons that I learned during that road trip back in October of 2016. And I've actually already recorded the talking head portion of that video where I share the lessons learned trying to do creative work while on this road trip to a cool conference. But what I want to add to that talking head is these sketches on the sides or on top of that screen to, again, be able to communicate those lessons, communicate my ideas better using these visuals, these sketch-noted mini slides capturing those lessons learned. So that's what I'm going to work on now, and I want to bring you along too to show you in more detail how I actually use this app. So let me start by showing you how I have set up the workspace here. I'm using layers pretty heavily within this particular project, this set of sketch notes. I have 5 specific lessons learned that I want to share, and I want to create a small sketch note for each of them. So what you can see within the first, what I'm considering the base layer here, I have just used let's actually try to recreate it here. I'm going to add a new layer just to show you some of the different tools that I've used to make a little bit of a background color so that I can see the frame. Turn that background layer on. So as I mentioned, the gel pen is my go-to drawing pen, but if I want to do kind of like a background palette on top of which I will draw, then I might use this painting brush here, which I will use with a white pretty strong brush here, and then as I kind of paint, this then becomes my base layer, which I can add other sketch notes on top of. So that's what I did to create this original base layer here, which is the one that I will continue using. And I no longer want that background because when I end up saving these images, I do only want kind of the white clouds. I want everything else to be transparent because that will work well for overlaying it on top of the talking head video that I already shot. So I also worked on a little bit of a lessons learned title sketch here, and one of the reasons I like layers is that with each individual layer within Procreate, what you can do here is once you have a layer selected using the tool, not that one, using that tool right there, you can actually move around and resize individual layers, which is really helpful if you like to keep things centered or you're drawing a couple different things and you want to make them more or less the same height. That just adds a bunch of flexibility to be able to move around individual elements. I also like how you can do a 2-finger tap to undo. So I'm going to continue undoing till it's back to its original location there. Other cool shortcuts, a 3-finger tap is a redo. So there's 2 fingers to undo, 3 fingers. If I keep doing 3 fingers, it'll redo all those things, or 2 fingers to undo all those steps. And a 4-finger tap gets all menu items out of the way, so you have the full screen to work with, or another 4-finger tap to bring it all back. So the first thing that I wanted to share about the road trip was the fact that this entire country, the entire United States, is a pretty darn beautiful place. So in this case, just using the lower 48 portion of the US map as a container for this phrase here, that's the extent of this single sketch note. One thing I'm going to adjust is this layer right here. Not only do I think I want this number to be centered, I want to change the color of that border there. So I'm going to go in and erase, make sure my eraser isn't too big. I'm going to erase this border here and then get back to my primary pen. So this is pretty much the only pen that I will use from here on out. Switch up the color. I think I want to go a lighter gray. I'm pretty sure, yeah, I want it to be lighter than the primary dark gray that I use for that color there. So I'll go with a light gray, do a similar container for that number there. Then I think I will also select this layer, move it down a little bit just for overall spacing. And I think that's the final image that I will use for this first idea. Essentially, this becomes the first slide that I will share within the video. And when you're finished with an image here within Procreate, there are lots of options for sharing it. What I'm going to do is, not export a video. You can do that, but I don't want to do that right now. So what's cool is it keeps track of all of the marks that you make. So if you wanted to export essentially a time-lapse video showing the whole creation process behind whatever thing you sketchnote or illustrate, that's what that video will create. But I just want to share the artwork, and by sharing it as a PNG, it keeps the background transparent. And the one that I end up using most often is I'll airdrop it just to my laptop, and from there I can use it with whatever application I've got up and running for the task at hand. Well, let's work on point number 2. So I'm going to create a new layer here and turn off the previous 2 layers. So I've kind of got a blank slate once again, and I'll start with the primary image for this one, which is going to be a little bit more of a scene. I want the ground here at the bottom. I'm going to go for a tall but lanky tree. I'm going to zoom in here and try a little more, slightly smaller brush size, quick, rough sketch of the van, which I have now drawn enough times that I'm getting pretty decent at drawing it. Tires are probably a little big here, but accuracy, not really my biggest concern for this one. And the words for this second sketchnote slide here are going to be the loneliness of the long-distance traveler. I'm going to talk about the role of solitude when you're on a single-person road trip like I was. And I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm not exactly sure how the spacing is going to work out, but knowing that I can undo very easily, I'm just going to jump in and give it a go. Because as you can see here too, the pressure sensitiveness of the Apple Pencil is something that I'm still getting used to. I think it allows for huge potential that, you know, if you have less pressure, you get a broad line like that, but if you apply more pressure, you can get a fine line like that. That's not yet intuitive for me. I'm not yet very good at it, but I think with more practice, I can get to the point where I'm using that feature effectively. I think I could do that spacing a little bit better, so I'm just going to back all the way up. Those were all double finger taps. This is a play on the short story, The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner, which I read back in college when I actually was a long distance runner. I think I'll add a couple of helper lines. Then I'll go up one more new layer. I could have separated some of the things on this layer if I wanted to be able to play around with location and size, but since I know I want to fit all 5 of these ideas within one project here, I'm trying not to get too fine-tuned with the use of layers. Here you can see, look at that difference in pressure from light to fine. which to me it's counterintuitive at first, because when I press harder with a marker, I get a thicker line. So I think that's part of why I'm having some trouble adjusting to that particular feature. All right, there's a good enough 2. Let's add a good enough border. Get our scaling tool here. I think I've got a little bit of room to bring this layer down. Pull that layer down a little bit. And if we want to check for consistency, we can kind of compare how that one looks to our first one. Less going on here, so the numbering's a little bit bigger. And since they're not really going to be shown side by side, I'm okay with the differences in size there. So I hope this example gives you a sense of the possibilities of a tool like this for creating sketch notes. The use of layers for flexibility, different pen tools. You saw me use just 2 of all of these options. There's so much you can do here. How to use a few different colors, and how to move individual objects around. I am definitely excited to continue using this tool myself. One way that I have yet to use the iPad is for live sketchnoting, and that's primarily because I'm not yet comfortable enough with the tool or quick enough to be able to use it in a live setting when you have to be prepared to make quick decisions and know your tool really well. But even though I'm not there yet, I can imagine getting there. And for those who are already using a tablet for live sketchnoting, my suggestion is this: focus on process. Decide how you're going to use all of those features that you just saw. Features like layers and multiple colors and multiple pens and zoom. Those options are the reasons that a tablet is a powerful sketchnoting tool, but there are also so many of them that it can become overwhelming. So be sure to put plenty of constraints on the process to make sure that you can use that tool effectively. If you would like to see the next 3 sketchnoted slides that I'm about to work on now, go check out that lessons learned video on my personal page. I'm slowly working toward a point where there will be a little bit more integration between the things that I'm sharing on that channel and what I'm up to here. I want that personal channel to be a little bit more of a behind the scenes, as well as other creative projects that are running alongside but still fairly parallel to this project here, Verbal to Visual. And if you're interested in using a tablet and Sketch app to make Sketchnote videos, then check out my course, How to Make Sketchnote Videos, where I will show you the entire process behind making the intro portion of this video. And finally, shout out to Hank Green and John Green, who run the channel Vlog Brothers and who put on this event, NerdCon Stories. If you're not already familiar with those two, go check their channel out. They're doing a lot of interesting things on the internet in general, and particularly on YouTube. And with that, I will say good luck in your own experiments with different tool combinations for capturing, processing, and sharing ideas. I hope this video gave you a little bit of a window into digital sketchnoting. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.